Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Wigtown Area Committee. I would just say at this point we're being live streamed on Teams, and that recording will be available online shortly after the finish of the meeting. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones, switching off the videos when not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any items, you should write speak in the Teams chat function and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. Any members which have to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period, or you could write leave in the chat function and then join, and this will allow us to monitor members' presence. So the first item is the Sedern apologies and my approval, the Chair's approval of the members' remote participation. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. We've got one apology this morning being from the Chair, Councillor Scobie. There's 6 members present, 5 here in the Council chamber and Councillor McCammon online on Teams.
Thank you, and I'm happy to confirm my agreement to the remote participation. So moving on to item 2, which is the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations members wish to make? Nope, I'm not seeing anything, and nothing online. Thank you. So item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which took place on the 7th of September 22. Are members happy to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Thanks, Councillor Ingalls. Item 4, we're moving on, is the Communities Director and the end of year assessment of the business plans for 2019 to 2023 performance, covering April 2021 to 31st of March 22, and the report is by the Director of Communities. So today we're being asked to consider the end of year performance reports. All of the performance reports that we will consider are caveated within the context of a post-COVID recovery and the effect on performance and delivery of services. Our first report, members, is the Communities Director End of Year's Performance Report, and I'm pleased to see that this report contains disaggregated information for our area. There are 39 performance measures, only 3 of which are outside acceptable limits, and 17 measures regarding projects which are all within acceptable limits. It's great to see the amount of detail in this report and the positive impact on our local communities. I'd like to briefly highlight in particular the work of young people in terms of counselling in schools and impact on mental health improvement. Also the positive feedback from young people engaged in the Summer of Play 21. I'd also mention the development of the inclusive play park at Newton Stewart, adding to the existing good work in this area at Stair Park. It's important that our young people and families receive this type of support during COVID and beyond. I'd also highlight the positive contribution around visitor return, helping reassure our communities and visitors to our communities post-lockdown and helping manage communities' safety with civic pride and cleanliness as D&G once again welcomes visitors back to our region post-COVID. We should also recognise the positive benefits of funding, whether tackling poverty or area committee funding to our community groups, working in partnership with the council to produce great outcomes. There's lots of detail in the report. I've highlighted just a few aspects, but I'm sure members will have specific questions, and I'll open the floor to members. However, I do have Harry Hay and his colleagues are in attendance for any questions, so I will open it out to members. Thank you. Councillor Tuesday.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to item 3.11.6, Scottish Government funding for play parks. I raised an issue and I asked for a report to come to the committee in the beginning of summer or so, and it was regarding regarding play parks and especially Lawkins Play Park. And I was told that we were going to get a report coming to the committee in September. However, I believe the officer was off sick, and I was hoping to see it at this committee. Will that be coming up soon, Harry, or is that scheduled?
Through you, Chair, I certainly know that as part of the Public Asset Class Capital Report that's going to Communities Committee in December, that very issue is being covered on a region-wide basis. But if there was a commitment, obviously, to bring a report to Wigtown Area Committee, I'll speak to the appropriate colleague and make sure that that's on the next available agenda, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Justy? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor McCammon online to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Yeah, Harry, a couple of questions from me, if you don't mind. I'm just checking you can hear me okay. I'm taking it you can. So in the appendix on page, where are we? 38. So it kind of comes under two of the column, sorry, the rows in the table. So point 3, protect our most vulnerable people. So I won't go into the detail massively, but probably from the beginning of this year, Harry, I have been questioning the out of order hoist and lift in the Merrick. A few people, obviously especially disabled people, have been coming to me to say that when is it going to get fixed? Why is it not fixed? And so on and so forth. So we're talking months now. I can send you the specifics on a separate email. I'm really, really disappointed that these have not been installed or repaired. I'm constantly having to chase, and a guy that is reliant on the hoist, you know, his mental health is starting to suffer. So I'm conscious of all the good work we're doing. So please don't, you know, see this criticism as the focus. But this is really important to constituents in my patch, or our patch, shall I say. It is a big, big thing for people to get out, especially up to the leisure centre, and have use of the lift and the hoist. So I appreciate you won't have answers today, Harry, but if you could just chase that up, that would be great. Secondly, on page 29, now I have raised this issue, so it's be an inclusive council. Ensure that local people and communities are at the heart of our decision making. Now, I have raised this issue time and time again with James McLeod, and I never get an answer. Again, I'm trying not to sound too irritated, but so the recycling centre or centres across the region, there was no public consultation for those. They were put in place. The online booking system, for the recycling centre. There was no public consultation for those purely because it was COVID related. But we're continuing with that, and we have invested on the upgrade of it, which is fine. I have absolutely no problem with it, but I know constituents do. Some do, some don't. I put a survey out on my Facebook page just to gather some information for myself, because I'm not given it by the council. And I would say 90% came back to say that the booking system was a hindrance. So what I would like to know, like I say, James has explained that it's easy to manage, and basically it's it's preferable by the council staff that it's kept in place. But this has not gone out to a public consultation, and I would really like answers to why it hasn't, and if we can consider it going out to public consultation, please, Harry. I'm sorry to moan, but I'd just like to raise those points, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCammon. I'm aware, although I don't sit on the Communities Committee, that this was discussed at length, but I'll pass over to Harry for a response. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll just take Councillor McCammon the questions in order, if I may. Yeah, the Merrick Leisure Centre, unfortunately, there are two issues that have been a real problem. One is the actual pool hoist that disabled users rely upon to physically get them in and out of the pool, and the other one is the actual lift that takes them from the ground floor up to the level where the fitness suite is. And absolutely share your frustrations and indeed the concerns of service users. We have been pushing the contractor to resolve both, but I've been told that it's predominantly down to supply chain issues that they simply cannot get the spare parts to get them sorted. To be honest, it's far from ideal, and I've been absolutely assured that our property services team have been constantly pushing the contractors to get them both resolved. When I asked about it middle of October, I was assured that both would be resolved in November of, I better say this year, in November of this year. So what I'll do following today's committee is I'll check progress in that, and I'll put a circulation round to all members so they know. We've also been in contact with specific families, and including probably the one that you've mentioned, Councillor McCammon, just to see whether in the interim, it's not ideal, but to see whether there's anything else that could be offered to them in the meantime, because you're quite right that use of that pool was very often the only type of physical exercise that some of the individuals could get. In relation to the recycling booking systems, absolutely, as the Chair indicated, it was discussed at the last Communities Committee, and where we are is that as part of the agreed waste strategy that has now went out to tender, the operation of the booking system and what that looks like across the region, and the views of the recycling service users will all be covered as part of that and reported back to elected members. As you quite rightly say, the initial purpose of it was to deal with the impact of COVID and make sure that staff and users could access the recycling services safely. But absolutely, at the end of the day, the recycling centres are there for customers, and we need to reflect their preferences and views. So we'll make sure that that's captured through that process. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Harry. Councillor McCammon, do you want to come back on any of those points?
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. Councillor Ingalls.
Thank you, Chair. Remiss of me, perhaps I should have declared an interest in this item as a Chair of the Newton Shoot Initiative. I'm happy to give a wee update on that if that's appropriate. We're pushing really hard to get this delivered. I know there is an issue which perhaps the officers could progress a little more quickly, which is the lease of the bit of ground that we need for the change in places toilet. As far as I'm aware, there's been no feedback whatsoever from officers since the beginning of August on this, and it's crucial that that lease is in place so that the initiative project manager can access funding to get that final piece of the jigsaw, which is the change in places toilet, in place, and we're really keen to get that over the line. So hopefully it's okay for me to bring that today, and officers can maybe do something about that.
Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. Harry, is there any response that you can give Councillor Ingalls in terms of the lease and land issue? Thanks.
Certainly, what I'll do following the meeting is find out exactly the status of that. I'm presuming that the Council's Property Services team will be very much involved in that, so I'll make sure that I get an up-to-date position out.
That's great, thanks, Harry.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Dashper.
Thank you, Chair. Page 19, 3.11.5 refers to the public toilets / conveniences. I see 56 have been opened across the Wigtown, well, have been opened in general, and 20 in the Wigtown area. To my knowledge, the only toilets in the Stranraer area that are open are the ones in Hanover Square car park. I'm just wondering if there's a plan to open more in Stranraer, because I know that there are abandoned toilets sort of down that Port Roadie bus stop, for instance. So is there something in the pipeline to expand the use of toilets in Stranraer, considering there's only the one public toilet in the whole town? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, my understanding is that the one that is down at Port Roadie opposite Stranraer police station has been closed for many, many years, but there was also one at Stair Park, just as you go in the entrance on the right-hand side. And as part of the overall scheme of access to toilet facilities, the council pushed for some time the awareness of toilet facilities within, for example, Instanra, the Ryan Centre, or the Merrick Leisure Centre in Newton Stewart, or the Customer Service Centre down at North Strand Street. So as things stand, I don't think there's any plans to open more public toilets, but I think there is a commitment that if there are existing toilets within public facilities, that the public are aware of where those are and can access them. And certainly feedback we've had to date from members of the public is that they find that quite a convenient approach. Also, in other areas, we've pushed the option. Some private sector operators, for example, have assisted by making their facilities available, albeit that the positive side effect is it brings people into their business, be that a cafe or a restaurant or whatever. So I'm not saying that suits every locale, but it's certainly something that has been looked at in other places. Thank you.
Councillor Ingles.
Yeah, just on that point, actually, the closure of public toilet facilities in certain places, I think, is a bit of an issue for me. I know that there was a concern over the winter about maintenance costs and one thing or another. The area that we live in Ward 2 in particular, has, the holiday houses and hotels are booked up. And there are a lot of camper vans, a lot of campers, a lot of dog walkers using the beaches and beauty spots. And there's one in particular that I know of down at Manreath that's now been closed at the beginning of October. And there's a lot of tourists use that car park down there. It just concerns me that although we're saying we're open to visitors, we're closing the public toilets. And I think that's something that maybe we should revisit at some point.
Thank you, Councillor Ingles. Again, I'm aware that Communities Committee have taken lots of reports on this issue. I'm not aware of if there is reports coming back, but I'll pass over to Harry to maybe update. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the Communities Committee have previously looked at public toilet provision across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, and the two categories are those toilets that are open all year round and those that are deemed seasonal. So I think probably certainly one of the ones you've mentioned will fall into the second category. And certainly the service at the moment, in terms of the budget that has been allocated, makes provision for those two categories. And that's not to say that if demand in the future is evidenced and proposals are taken back to elected members where perhaps visitor patterns or whatever have changed, it's certainly something that could be looked at, but it would certainly be something that would require to go back to the service committee with a full detail of what the resource implications would be, because it may well be that other toilets are used a lot less and they could be basically a environment from one to the other. So that's certainly something I'm quite happy to look at.
Yeah, I think, how do you prove that a toilet on a beach is going to be used a lot? I'm on that beach every day nearly with dogs, and the car park always has a lot of cars on it. Yeah, how do you gather that information and say, right, that car park toilet should be open? There's a tap out the back that has been disconnected, so you can't even get water for your dogs when you're out on the beach, and the people who are there with camper vans can't fill up their So we're either open in these beauty spots or we're closed. Yeah, that for me is a concern, and it would be good if we can have a look at that.
Thank you. Councillor Gusty, you were looking to come back in.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point there, I've had it raised to myself and to other members. I know Councillor Hill and I have been on a couple of runs to actually investigate this. Just while we're on public toilets, there's been the issue raised that we're providing free waste and free refill water for camper vans, and that is pushing camper vans out of paid sites, whether it would be supporting the local economy out to the outskirts of towns, etc., or out into the countryside. And there's such a facility just right outside a paid facility, and is it Lady Bay, down just near Ardwell, where we went and there was about mid-20s to mid-20s to low 30s, and a couple of times that I've been down, of camper vans in that area, out with the paid. I think it's the Camping Association site that's down there. I can't remember the name of them. To me, that's an issue, because we should have these folk in sites camping safely with the fire pits regulated, etc. And I've got a query with what David said there. With that, I don't think we should be pushing that these folks should be filling up camper vans in using the public services, because the public have to pay for the water rates through their council tax. So why are we not charging for camper vans?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Juice, I think the scheme you're referring to was one that was led by colleagues in economic development, and it was an initial response to the influx of visitors during sort of wider lockdown restrictions. And my understanding is that whilst it was to try and deal with the huge volume of visitors, particularly those in motorhomes and camper vans, the intention was to review it at an obvious period. So I'm quite happy to speak to colleagues in economic development and say it was raised this morning, if that's what members would like, just to see what the longer term plans are. But I think the initial purpose of it was to try and deal with providing facilities for those that were coming into the area, and we saw a huge spike of motorhomes and camper vans coming into Wigtown, which is brilliant, but equally there needs to be the facilities and the accommodation to deal with them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, certainly as Chair of ENR, it is something that comes across my desk in that capacity, and certainly the Aries sites, which I'm aware that certainly the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere and the Southern Upland Partnership have been in support of across the region, but as you say, it's about striking that balance, and certainly a piece of work that we can certainly review. And thank you, Harry. I've got Councillor McCammon online. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Harry, it's just, I'm sorry, but it's still in the public toilets issue. So I've raised it before. I'm aware that, you know, things that I'm mentioning or others are mentioning will come up, they have come up in Communities Committee. I sit on Communities Committee, however, we're not allowed to be ward specific. So this is a great opportunity for me to be ward specific on certain things. So apologies if there's repetition, but, you know, they need raised. So it's within the capacity of bins in public toilets. Now I've spoken to toilet attendants on this, and there doesn't appear to be bins. It's a black bag tied to one of the pipes or a handle, and it is really unsightly. Now this is a personal gripe. It's not a big issue. However, when the likes of Wigtown is a tourist hotspot, our book time, we need to be thinking outside the box as to what we can do, because I believe that a big problem is that kids are setting bins on fire. Bins are going missing and so on and so forth, which is fair enough. But in other districts, I've seen metal bins attached to the wall. They can still be set on fire, but they won't go walkabouts. So I just wondered, you know, the toilet attendant I spoke to had lots of ideas. So I just wonder, A, are we able to tackle this problem? I can't see it being hefty on the budget. And B, how often do we speak to toilet attendants and get their ideas? Because it seemed the buddy I was speaking to seemed a bit frustrated because they had so many ideas, but budgets were restricting them, which is understandable. So yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on that, please, Harry.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, certainly, as you say, Councillor McCammon, very often the best ideas in relation to a service come from the frontline staff that are delivering it. And I know there has been in the past issues with, as you say, vandalism, specifically of bins in public toilets, but that's not to say that if there's suggestions from frontline staff or indeed anybody about how it could be done differently and better, that we don't pick up on it. So I'm certainly happy. I'll ask the team in question that manages the public toilets whether it's a prevalent issue across all toilets or specific ones, and just see what options are available that could help improve the situation. Hopefully that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ingalls.
Okay, it's me again. A couple of items on this item. On page 18, 3.11.2, the Newton Stewart Flood Protection Scheme. Now, I understand that there's hold-ups there, and we keep getting sort of projected publication dates for the scheme. My concern, and the Community Council's concern, it's on their agenda next week, is the footpath to the south of the main bridge. The footpath to the south of the main bridge has washed away partially, and we're now entering a period where we're likely to get spates on the river. Big waters, there's a fair chance that a lot of that path could go. We're also out with the salmon running season now, so work within the water should be okay. I'm just wondering whether we can prioritise that and maybe put a bit of pressure on to see if we can get that section. I know it's part of the flood scheme, and it's part of the detailed flood scheme for the whole river, but that's a major concern, because that is a path, you know, it's a cycle path, and it's used a lot for walkers and dog walkers and bikers and one thing or another, and really concerned. It has been expressed to us all in the ward that one big spate could take that path out and it would need to be closed. And then there would be major issues trying to get it rebuilt. And we highlighted this at the start of the year. So they were aware that there is a risk of this. So if there's something we can do in that, Harry, that would be great. At 3.11.3, the Harbour Revision Order, I joined the Harbour Subcommittee when I joined the Council in 2017. I think we're talking about that, Katie, at that time. You know, and it just seems to take forever, this. I don't know why that's still not rubber stamped. But I'm in the Harbour Subcommittee again, so hopefully we'll get an update on that one. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. And yeah, no, I really welcome your raising of the issue of the path. I think Councillor Ingalls has said all ward members have been made very clear to us by our community that this is really important, but we appreciate that the work is ongoing. But thank you, Councillor Ingalls. And yeah, as the former chair of the Harbour Subcommittee, I can only express my frustration at the length of time that is taken, but I will look forward to the new Harbour Subcommittee. We have a new chair in Councillor Dashper, and yeah, that is something that I think we absolutely need to be on top of, because it's something really relevant. We can see the harbour from here. But Harry, I'll maybe pass back to you for any further comments.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so the plan is that in terms of the Newton Stewart Flood Prevention Scheme, that as part of a wider report to Communities Committee in December of this year, 6th of December, members will be requested, they'll get an update on the overall progress, but also be asked to agree that the scheme is published early in 2023, which then gives us the opportunity to take it through the statutory process. But I think the point you raised specifically about this path is an important one, far better, I believe, to be proactive than reactive. So I will speak to the flooding and engineering team to say if something that could be done in advance of that to stop it from happening to start with, because it sounds as though it's a bit vulnerable to higher waters at this time of year. It may well be that they could come up with something that is an interim arrangement pending the wider scheme.
I think all the gabion baskets that are in that section are gone. You know, they've already been washed down into the river, so we're now open to soil banking, and that's the main issue for me. If we get a really big spate, it'll just keep washing it out.
In terms of the Harbour Revision Order, as the Chair's quite rightly said, there's a Harbour Subcommittee on the 30th of November end of this month. And I know there is a meeting between Stena Line and the director next week, at which this is the very issue that's being pushed, and there will be a report on the 30th of November agenda, specifically in relation to that matter. So certainly, whilst I appreciate the timescales it's taken, hopefully this report will define the situation more clearly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. I don't see any other members. Oh, sorry, David, yep. Stack on.
3.16.2, supporting community groups. I have asked the community councils in Ward 2 if they were happy to start up the federation. I got a bit of a knockback from the ward officer at the time to say, well, it's not their responsibility to support the set-up of the federation and to get it up and running again, which concerned me a wee bit. I've now emailed the community councils again, or I will do, to try and set up a meeting at the start of February to get the federation back up and running, because the feedback I'm getting from community councils is there is a lack of support, especially to new community councillors. And community councils are vital. You know, we really need to support them. I had one in particular over the last couple of weeks contacted me about issues running, how to run the actual community council meeting and where they can get support on that. Now, the fact that she had to ask me that, I felt was wrong, you know. So I'm just wondering whether we can get something moving on the federation side, not simply just coming from the ward elected members, but coming from the council officers as well. The issue for me with federation was that you couldn't get a chairman, a secretary, a treasurer, or whatever it may be. And the proposal I had was that, well, one community council will do it for a year, and then the next year another community council, you've already got a chair, a treasurer and a secretary, so you could run it for a year and then pass it on. But I would like officers to maybe get involved in that and help to pull that together, because I think it would benefit community councils to be in that sort of forum and be able to discuss what's going on in their own area and support one another.
Thank you, Councillor Ingles. Harry.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, certainly the principle of the Community Council Forum is to provide that sounding board, share best practice. You know, community councils can talk about experiences, etc., and kind of peer support, etc. So I know it's something in the past that we were very keen to try and push across the whole of the region, and certainly I would suggest that if there's an appetite and an aspiration to have it, in whatever format the community councils would feel would work best, I really don't see a reason why we couldn't, you know, facilitate and try and start that discussion. And if there's a need also, I think it's a wider issue for community councils to be clearer about a point of contact for governance advice or function advice, etc. I'm sure we can reinforce the information and maybe just improving the signposting a wee bit. But again, offline, I'll speak to colleagues to see what we can do.
We know the support's there. We know it's there. It's just getting that connection between community and letting them know that the support's there. And I don't think the appetite for the federation, I think, needs to come from the council officers, not necessarily from just the community councils. You know, it's all very well. I mean, I know I've had replies from all the 12, I think it was, in my ward, who have come back and said, yeah, they would like to come along to a meeting initially to find out what benefit they could have. When I first joined the council, the federation was quite strong. We had resilience meetings. We had somebody come through and did a resilience meeting to the federation. And we also had roads came through. So community councils can establish that link, you know, with a council and a council officers responsible for potholes or whatever it may be, you know, and get that one-to-one meeting. And I thought that was really beneficial for community councils. So I think that's something that not only ward members and community councils, but I think officers need to buy into that and help to get that back up and running again. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think I would just also highlight there was a huge piece of work done by the Federation on derelict and land buildings, and the council still use that piece of work and refer to it. But I'll maybe pass over to Jamie, who obviously works directly within that directorate as well.
Yeah, Just to say, I'll take back with Harry, David, on that. I think you're right. I think it's really important. I think community councils learn from each other, and I think I think back to the Annandale and Eskdale Federation of Community Councils, which run successfully for years. A lot of learning in that, and a lot of learning about clarity about the role of community council and sharing of good practice. And when community councils are functioning well, it's really, really useful to their communities, as you know. So I'll take that back with Harry and look at that, how that federation can be supported. I think originally there was an aspiration to have federations of community councils in the 4 areas, and then those community councils linking up to share good case studies and good examples of good practice. So I think definitely to the benefit of all. Thanks.
Thank you all. Great. Well, if I don't see anybody else looking to come in, we'll move to the recommendations. So the recommendations 2.1 is to review the overall summary of performance within the individual heads of service business plan in the Wigtown area. We are considered the additional area-based successes and development as detailed in the key achievements sections of the report, and considered any aspects of performance to be referred to future committees. What I would maybe just capture, because we have had quite a range of discussions, is there are various ones there. So Councillor Gusty, you had requested that report back to come to the next area committee at the very start. I think it would be really useful, and Harry, you have confirmed that there's a report going to the Communities Committee on the Newton Stewart flood scheme, but as a major project, I think I would certainly like to request a report back to Wigtown Area Committee specifically on that issue, combining the comments about the paths, if members are in agreement with that. There was also the request to discuss the Harbour Revision Order, but that is going to go to the Harbour Subcommittee, I understand, so if that request can be captured as well, that would be really great. And the only other point that I was going to raise myself was clearly the report, we have got that caveat that we've been working within COVID, and there's a lot of reasons why maybe we haven't met some of these targets, but what's missing for me is the exemption reports, and I appreciate that they may all be the same because of COVID, but I think it's really important that we capture that. So in our future reports, if we can ensure that we get those exemption reports, I think that would be really helpful. Are members content with those recommendations? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Thank you. Now, moving on to the next item on the agenda, that's the Economy and Resources end-of-year assessment of business plans and the performance from 2021 to March 2022, and the reports by the Director of Economy. So the report mentions that there's been a great deal of capacity in the economy and development staff, which was taken up with important disbursement of business support grant funding during post-COVID. I would highlight the local detail in the report around the Stranraer Water Sports Hub project, the Marine Expansion project and the redevelopment of the George Hotel, all projects of great interest locally and bound to engender questions from members. The expansion of the reused shop was also of great interest, and certainly personally I've had an awful lot of feedback from members who came to do a visit just a few weeks ago and how impressed they were with the Stranraer project. So that's great for the community, and certainly other members across the region are looking to have similar projects within their localities. I'm aware we've also got a very innovative approach with that waste recycling, so yeah, congratulations to all. So it's also good to see that the Whithorn Community Hub and the development of the Rins Coastal Project is also featured here. So I've got Melissa, and I can also see Jamie on screen. I've got various officers online to answer, because clearly this is quite a diverse range of topics. But I will maybe first just come to officers to see if there's anything else you wanted to add to the report, and then open it out to members.
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
No, thanks, Chair. Nothing to add.
Thank you. Councillor Ingalls.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was looking at page 47, Stranraer Marine Expansion Project, and the one prior to that, the Water Sports Hub. What is not on here is the East Pier. and what's happening with East Pier and where we are. You know, there were major surveys done a while back, and we haven't really heard an awful lot about the East Pier since then. You know, it would be interesting for us to get an update on that as a project, as a defined project. Somebody can do that, or even a report coming back to us, I think would probably be beneficial. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Ingalls. I mean, certainly we're having regular updates, and I don't know, Melissa, if you're able to speak to the specifics on that one, that might be quite useful.
To be honest with you, Chair, we've not, the project development team hasn't been tasked with taking forward anything in connection with the East Pier. I am aware that a number of years ago there were a number of technical studies done, but since the project development team was established in 2019, we've not really been tasked with bringing forward projects or proposals. As you know, our remit is to assemble funding packages for projects that are identified. I think the main constraint is that the council doesn't currently own the site. It's currently owned by a third party. I think that there have been various discussions at a more senior level to myself as part of the work that was done in 2021 in connection with the Freeport proposal. But as I say, I can't really give an update at this particular stage because my team's not been involved with that particular site. However, we can take on board the request for a more detailed report and feed that back to our head of service to arrange for some information.
Councillor Ingalls, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I think we were aware that we don't own it, but the pressure, I think, has to come from the council to try and drive forward whatever's going to happen on East Pier. I think there's also part of it owned by the rail company as well, you know, where the station sits. But from memory, I was quite sure they were all on board, you know, to help develop whatever was going to happen on that pier. But we know there are major structural issues with it before any development can take place. So it was something that it just seems to have run to petered out to nothing, and we're not getting, or there doesn't appear to be a way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. Yes, I mean, I appreciate the points raised, and it's well made. There's not detail within this report, and certainly we have been getting monthly or 6 weekly, I'm not sure of the timescale, meetings with all the team. Melissa, where would it be appropriate to come back and get more information? Because obviously part of our recommendations is considering any performance to be referred back to future committees. Would it be appropriate, could we request from you that we could get maybe an update on the whole redevelopment within Stranraer? Because clearly there's an awful lot of work, and the East Pier being part of that. I'm also very well aware that the community are driving forward with place planning and how that might fit in there. I'm not sure myself, so I would defer back to yourself, but I think it's a point well made. And in the past, we've had reports specifically on the redevelopment within Stranraer, covering all of the issues specific to Stranraer, but out with the whole end of year, all the key performance indicators, etc. So I'll maybe pass back your comment, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. What I will do is I will feed that back, seek clarification from our head of service and also from governance about the appropriate forum in which a report has to be brought forward. Certainly what we've tried to cover in this particular report is the projects that we're currently working on and the progress with those during 21-22. As I say, East Pier hasn't been included as part of that because our focus has been very much on the marina, the Water Sports Association project, the George Hotel, and colleagues have, and the furniture project, and colleagues have been working on other projects in Stranraer, including bringing forward proposals to do place plan work. I would just make one final observation or comment, if I may, Chair, and that is just to remind members that the strategy that underpins the work that we're doing at the waterfront as a whole was in order to create an environment in which and where a business case for investment at East Pier was likely to be demonstrate a net positive social return. We needed to increase demand for the area. And the way we were increasing demand, economic demand for the area, was by focusing on investment at the western end, at the marina, expanding the marina, and investment at the water sports hub as well, and other things that we've done over the past few years. So the idea, the strategy that we're pursuing is to focus on investing in those areas, pump prime demand, so that when we start to look at the bringing forward more detailed proposals for the East Pier further downstream, we are more likely to be able to produce a business case with what's called a net positive business case ratio, a net positive BCR. Being able to demonstrate a net positive BCR is one of the key factors in being able to attract investment. So as I say, that is, it's not that we've forgotten about it, but the strategy really was to focus on these other big projects to begin with in order to increase those levels of demand for Stranraer.
Thank you, Melissa. Were you wanting to come back? Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, we know that Stranraer's the capital of the West, and it's brilliant to see all the things that are happening in Stranraer now. The marina development and the water sports development come under a banner of one waterfront, I believe. And when that was mooted at the time, I looked at that and I thought, well, does that include the East Pier or does it not include the East Pier? Because the East Pier is part of the waterfront, you know, and it's the market failure of that site that's the main issue, and how we fund that market failure to get it back to be able to be a usable site for development. And it's that element, I think, that Councillor Sloan and Councillor Scobie in years gone by have been hammering home about yellow vests on site to find out what's actually going to happen with that bit of ground. And we did, we know that there was major surveys done in structural surveys, but that's where it has ended. And I think it's taken that element of work forward that is where we are now. We need to know, and the people of Stranraer need to know what's happening with that section of ground, you know, and if it's, we don't want it drifting for another 5 or 6 years before, you know, we start to deal with that market failure. So that would be my concern, is that, yeah, it's great to see everything happening on the waterfront that's happening at the minute and within Stranraer Town Centre. But that East Pier has been the bane of councillors' life for the last 10 years, you know, and there was a promised £6 million set aside to go onto that waterfront from the Scottish Government, and we need to know whether that's still accessible and whether, you know, that actual element of the project for Stranraer waterfront is going to move forward, or if it's just going to stagnate for the next 5 or 6 years. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Ingalls. I've got Councillor Giusti next.
Thank you, Chair. It's on the waterfront again, actually. Something that I raised a couple of months back, and I'm just looking for a position now that I'm here. On the One Harbour project, which is the Water Sports Association and the Council's work on renewing the marina, where are we in the process on tendering for a design consultant? Because I know that we went out to tender and we failed, or we couldn't get someone. I think we went back out to tender, if I'm correct in saying. Where are we on that now? Have we got someone, or are we?
Melissa, thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, we're now into the realms of 22-23, but yes, I can advise that the process now is that we're using an existing framework for consultants, and a design team, I think, has recently been appointed, or is in the process of being appointed, with a view to getting a work plan developed and more details about how the project is going to proceed, with detailed milestones available for you. So we're hoping to bring forward those details very soon. But yes, the tendering process is now complete.
Thank you for letting me back in, Chair. And Melissa, will there be an opportunity for councillors of the Wigtown Area Committee to meet with these consultants to give our opinions and our views? Will that be a facility given to us?
Good question. Part of the work that needs to be done in order to take forward the project is a detailed stakeholder involvement strategy. So that's how we're actually going to involve key stakeholder groups, and clearly elected members are a key stakeholder group. So what we would want to do as part of that process is set out how the consultant team is going to engage with our elected members and have those discussions and feed their views into key parts of the project as the project is developed. So yeah.
Thank you both. I don't see any other members looking to speak just now, so if we move to the recommendations, I will maybe add some comments myself, if I may. And so our first recommendation is to review the overall summary performance within the individual head of service business plan in the Wigtown area. I would request, and I'll maybe come back to this in 2.3, that we actually get the business plan along with the key performance indicators and where we are and where there's exception reports. Because if we compare this to the previous item on the agenda, there's a huge amount of data that's not necessarily there, and it makes our job as members harder to potentially track. And these questions that have been raised of where are we, had we had that detail, we may be, that may have been captured. So recommendation 2.1 is to review, which we have done to a certain extent. 2.2 was to consider the additional area-based successes and developments as detailed in the section, and certainly I would say that there are many successes and we should be supporting those going out. And then 2.3 is to consider any aspects of the performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. In this one, I think there has been a clear steer from members, and please do come in, that I think it would be appropriate, and from listening to members, there's a request that we get a future report back on perhaps the one waterfront support detailing the issues that have been raised, and that perhaps that we also get included within that how the key stakeholder engagement is going to take forward, along with potentially even our communications plan. I know it's something that all members have raised at one point or another. So if I would certainly add that in as an additional aspect if members are happy to get that to our next area committee. Thank you. And certainly as a second consideration for the future reports, I would strongly urge and request the report authors to come back with the full appendices, because they don't appear to be in this report as they are with others. So that would be, I'd like that to be captured and taken back for future reports as well. Are members content with those three recommendations? Yep, thank you. Thank you, officers, for your time as well today online. Thanks, Jamie. Now, moving on to item 6, this is the Education and Learning Directorate report. This is our third performance report in education and learning, covering from 21 to 22. And I know from the 10 performance indicators, 6 are on track, 2 are within acceptable limits, and 2 are outside acceptable limits. The pandemic was a difficult time for young people, and the effects on their education are still being felt. I'm pleased to read about the focus on recovery and the reintroduction of activities back into school routines. As a highlight, I'd like to congratulate Whithorn Primary School achieving Digital Schools Award Scotland and the schools engaged with the Digital Leaders Programme. Whithorn, Portpatrick, Dromore, Port William, Penningham and Garliston Primary School. It's also good to see the schools work on climate emergency. The climate champions work from the Douglas Stewart High School, Kirkcowan Primary School, Whithorn Primary School, Belmont Primary School, Glenluce Primary School, Park Primary School have all engaged in climate champion work, and Penningham Primary School and Whithorn Primary School each achieved Eco Schools Scotland Green Flag Awards, which is absolutely fantastic and shows that there's a real concern and appetite from our young people that this remains top of our agenda. Members of this committee generally like to see the local detail of performance in schools in their area and ward, and I would just like to thank the officers for bringing such a detailed response. I know personally when Jim Brown was at our last committee, I was urging that we have the full detail in there, and we have a huge amount of data before us today. So I'll maybe just pass it over to Gillian if there's anything you wish to add, and then open up to members for questions. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning, members, and also thank you for your thanks to the officers for bringing the detail. And there is a huge amount of detail in this, and it's useful to look at the report in the round. So I'm happy to take any questions, and there are a couple of points I would like to make regarding the report, but let's take some questions first of all, and perhaps we can elaborate on those. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I bring members in, it was noted, and apologies, I should have probably said at the start, our Youth Council representatives aren't with us today. They have actually submitted apologies, so Claire, if you could capture that. Some of them are attending the Youth Matters conference at the Bridge today, and of course we'll all be looking forward to working and having workshops with our Youth Council members tomorrow at our joint Full and Youth Council. However, Finlay, as one of our representatives, has actually contacted me with some comments that he would like to make, and if I can read those out for members and just for comment, I think that would be really important, because when we have young people as part of our committee, it's really so important that they feel empowered and actually they are making a difference. So if it's okay with members, I will read out the comments that Finlay has sent on. So in item 6 on page 64 on the appendix 2, there is a question, and it basically, he has written, under the heading of improvement actions, the paper mentions the promotion of digital opportunities such as e-soil. From my experience, and apologies if I've pronounced that wrong, I don't really feel as though this is promoted enough. I know the value of it, having attended online webinars provided by them for the past 3 years. I think more could be done to promote this as an incredible valuable resource. Is there anything that could be done to promote this further, as the current scheme has resumed this week following the October break?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not a Gaelic speaker, but I think e-school is a pretty good guess, I think. Absolutely. I'm delighted to hear Finlay comment so positively around that, and that we do have a lot of young people doing our Advanced Higher Hub, and through the national and through our local South West Regional Improvement Collaborative. So the evaluation is now complete, and we've learned a lot from that in terms of how we can support young people learn online. Very practical considerations regarding having a quiet space, having good Wi-Fi, having a device, having support from the school. So we had over 100 young people in the first year of the Digital Learning Advanced Higher Hub, and we have 250 this year. So we hope to continue and extend that. I think as more young people engage in learning in that way, there will be confidence for parents and school staff as well as young people that this is a safe route to achieve qualifications.
Thank you, Gillian. And a further comment from Finlay is under on page 57, 3.10, priority to be an inclusive council. And his comment was that could he request that the members present recognise the fantastic efforts of staff and pupils at the Douglas Stewart High School in their participation in the Mentors in Violence Prevention programme. The programme is set to run for a second year following its success last year. Mentors in the Violent Prevention is a peer education programme providing young people with the language and framework to explore and challenge the attitudes, beliefs and cultural norms that underpin gender-based violence. The programme's scenarios explore a range of behaviours including image sharing, controlling behaviour, harassment and the use as bystander approach, where individuals are not considered potential victims or perpetrators but empowered and active bystanders with the ability to support and challenge their peers in a safe way. Certainly I would be absolutely happy to endorse that and recognise that fantastic work as well. And also just to Finlay for taking the time to comment on that. So I'll open out to members if there's any questions that they wish to raise. Councillor Goosty.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just reading this report and I've not seen any mention to Shire Academy in the main body of the report, not in the attachments or the appendices. I'm looking for an update on the management structure of Shire Academy and where we are and what's the short-term future.
I'm meeting Mr Farker today, immediately after this meeting, and I've just written to Ms Blackwell, who's the chair of the Parent Council. So following my meeting with Jamie today and writing to Ms Blackwell, I'll be able to update members. So I'm very conscious that members have been incredibly patient, as have the members of the school community. These processes take time. You can have my assurance that we are continuing to meet weekly with colleagues to make sure that we're managing this case appropriately and that the learning and good progress of the pupils at Stranraer Academy continues to be our priority.
Could I ask that the 8 members of the area committee are emailed with that later on today then, please?
Remiss of me, absolutely. I think my cascade for comms is to check with the head teacher, chair of the parent council, leader chairs, ward members at the same time, and then the wider education and learning committee, because I'm really conscious that people are looking for information and I want members to have the most accurate and timely information as possible.
Thank you. I'm just checking to see if there's anybody else. Oh, Councillor McCammon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And hi, Gillian, and thank you for the report. I don't know, we meet regularly and we just met yesterday, so I'll keep it brief. Being ward specific though, I think one of the meetings we had, we chatted about homeschooling, and if my memory serves me correctly, you had said, or you thought it had quadrupled, is that correct? So I just wondered, obviously not for this committee right now, but can you send me the stats on Ward 1 and 2's homeschooling? Are you able to do that? And secondly, just your thoughts on why you think that's quadrupled. So do you think it's COVID related? Don't you know? Do you have any statistics, and are you able to send us those as well, please?
Absolutely, it is. There were 46 applications last year for homeschooling across the authority, so we've done that piece of work in terms of looking at the trend. So the trend for requests for home education have quadrupled. So what I don't have at my fingertips is the absolute number in totality. So I know that there were 46 applications. I've got another 2 on my desk today. So the numbers are increasing, and I can certainly break that down to a ward level. It is an interesting trend. It is a trend across Scotland. We've also got requests for flexi-schooling, which is also within the law. So that is where parents may choose that their child only attends school part of the week, and that is a formal arrangement. So the reasons, I think, are varied. There certainly has been an uptick in this. There's been an increase in these numbers post-COVID, and we are concerned about that. I think if the reason for homeschooling is because the child is not settling in school or the child is anxious in school, then we need to deal with that. Clearly, parents have got the right to request, and young people have got the right to request, and we will support that. But if the reason is more worrying, if the reason is because the child is unhappy or is not feeling that they can cope with school, then we need to drill down into that, and we work with families really carefully. There is a report that comes to me to sign off all home educated families, because it's a big decision to remove a child from the role. We like to have line of sight on children, and we have to make sure that we're meeting our duty as an education authority. So there's a comprehensive report comes to me before we sign the children off the roll. And I would be expecting to see that we had done everything possible to encourage that child back into schooling, and that we had addressed any barriers to learning. We keep the door open, so we would ask officers to check in with the parents every year. That's what they sign in to say, that in removing the child from the role, that they'll check in with us on at least an annual basis, and the door is always open for the child to return to school either partially or full-time.
Thank you, Gillian. Councillor McCammon, do you want to come back in at all?
Yes, please, if that's okay, Chair. Thanks, Gillian. Yes, so if you could just send that in an email, these statistics, that would be great, so that I've got them in front of me. One last thing, well, a comment before I go on to my last thing, is that at the Education Committee, the last Education Committee, the figures for exclusion rates was quite stark. However, and sorry, attendance as well. But looking at Ward 1 and 2, they're quite positive, so I'm pleased to see that. One last thing, if I may, and this is just as a result of various questions I've been asked over the holidays. Are you able to send a breakdown of PEF funding usage, please, for schools across Ward 1 and 2? And that's my last request.
Through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. We've just completed the PEF spend analysis and they were submitted to Education Committee in broad terms, so I can send that on a... It is public information, but we can certainly direct you to that.
Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you. Councillor Ingalls.
Thanks, Chair. 3.10 on page 57, priority 4, being inclusive council. We're finding it, we have an issue at the moment with an elected member who is deaf, and trying to assist him to carry out his duty. He has 2 children at school as well who are deaf, and he seems to have issues with it. I'm just wondering how we deal with that, Gillian, you know, and whether we deal with it adequately, or do we need, is there policy development needed there, or finance, or whatever? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I met with Councillor Dennerley and representatives yesterday, and I think we all agreed that there is an issue with accessibility of the staff. There is an issue with ensuring that our staff have the adequate qualifications, and it was a really positive and proactive meeting from my perspective, and actually I got a letter of thanks this morning from Councillor Dennerley, and we've arranged another meeting in 3 months' time. We do have a British Sign Language strategy across the Council, 2018 to 2024, and we now need to accelerate some of that work. There is a programme at Heriot Watt University for signers and interpreters, and I've asked our Edinburgh University colleagues and Heriot Watt if there would be any opportunity to bring that more locally. We've also asked the college as to what else they could do to help us with this. It's not solely a council issue, but it certainly is a council issue. So we have an immediate issue in terms of making sure that deaf children have access today in the classroom to support them, and we have a medium and longer term issue in terms of the workforce. So there may be opportunities throughout the council plan that members may choose to look at accessibility through British Sign Language. There is certainly the 1+2 languages. British Sign Language counts in the Scottish Government policy for schools as a 1+2 language. So there's certainly work we can do, but I think from my point of view is we've got a strategy. Let's see where we're at with that, and let's accelerate progress that we may have lost through COVID, and let's lobby as hard as we can for some of these national programmes to reach out away from the Central Belt.
Thanks, David.
I think Councillor Dennerley's issue has put real focus on this, and it falls on us all, really. You know, it's so difficult when you're sitting in a meeting with John and you realise that you can't actually have a discussion with him, you know, unless his interpreter's sitting beside him. And I think it's really focused our minds on this one. So, and I'm sure John would like to be part of any development within the region, and give any help we can to push that forward and help develop whatever we need to, whatever policy we need to improve on or develop. Gillian, you know, he's very keen on that. Thanks.
Thanks, David. I think the point that's highlighted is absolutely why we need to have a range of elected members to highlight these issues, because that issue of accessibility has been highlighted by Councillor Dennerley in the same way that I push for the inclusivity of dyslexia. And we're sitting here today and it's something that I've talked about. Members can all see I'm sitting with my green papers. It's a similar issue, and I think it really highlights the importance as to why we need a variety of elected members sitting here today. But no, thank you for that. And Gillian, if you are able to take that back, I would just maybe add on to David's a supplementary question on there, is are we working within the Communities Directorate across our British Sign Language strategy? Because obviously schools is one focus, but we have members of our community that use sign language, you know, scattered throughout the region, throughout our communities. So how are we tying all that strategy in together, not solely focusing in on education?
Thank you. I think that's critical because there are so few qualified signers, so we do have to, and across the partnership, so NHS and the college are included in the partnership. So certainly been communicating with Lindsay Little, who's leading in the British Sign Language strategy for the council, and also with the organisation developments with James McDowell, because I do think we need to look at where we're at, broader than the schools, but making sure we take the an HR approach in terms of recruiting the staff that we need, as well as supporting our communities. Because as Councillor Dennerley said yesterday, it's a culture, it's a deaf culture, and it's not simply having translation ability, it's ensuring that children and people within the deaf community feel fully included in the community. And I think in many ways we are fortunate to have Councillor Dennerley in drawing the eye, quite literally, to this issue for us.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Hi, just on the deaf situation, we had a really good conversation with Jim Brown with regarding the 2 languages within schools, and it would be really good to see that British Sign Language was brought into the curriculum, if it could be, because I know that councils can, you know, change the curriculum slightly to adapt, and I think we should be a council that champions that and works towards it. So it's nice to hear you saying you're thinking about that, Gillian. Looking at all the things that have been achieved by the schools, absolutely fantastic. First of all, I'll pay tribute to Mrs Bailey at Kirkham, Leswell and Port Patrick. I think they got their silver accreditation UNICEF Rights Respecting Schools Award after the report was done, but I just wanted to highlight I'm really impressed with everything that the 3 schools have achieved, and I wanted to bring that to committee. They seem to be doing phenomenal work. For Maths Week, they were involved with the local college, and pupils got the opportunity to go to the local college and do lots of different projects, which I think is fantastic. I'd now kind of like to see that rolled out across all of the primary schools in the West, so that all of the children in the West are getting the same opportunities. I don't know how we can work together towards that, but I think that would be really good, because I have noticed that on a lot of the points, 3.7.4, there's no schools from Newton Stewart area involved in the science thing that was there. And when we look again to the STEM programme at 3.8.6, the schools again were all Stranraer based. And then we look to, there was another part, but I really feel that we need to be trying to get all the schools in the West to be involved, whether it's the head teachers, decisions, but we need to be encouraging them so that all the children are having the same opportunity, because I feel that there's a bit of a split at the moment, a bit of a divide, and with us being in the West and being so rural, all children need those sort of opportunities. But yeah, I mean, there's been lots of achievements, so good to see that.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. And this is simply a snapshot. And I note the comment that was made earlier around little information on Stranraer Academy. But, in the free press every week, you do see a number of schools represented across Stranraer and Newton Stewart, and there's a lot of activity. So I'll make sure that the report is fully reflective of Stranraer and Newton Stewart, but I can absolutely assure you that there is a lot of activity ongoing in all of the primary schools in the region.
Yeah, no, it would be good if we could see what all of the schools are doing and get a good, balance of that. Also, we did go into Stranraer Academy and we're very, very impressed with what the new head teacher is achieving there and all of his staff. They've got a long road ahead, but what they've done so far, the atmosphere was great when we went in, and lots of positive comments came from that.
Thank you, members. David, yes, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for allowing me back. Page 57, 3.10.4. I noticed there it says mainstream schools to be trained by trained West Primary Inclusion Learning Assistants. So those are specifically trained learning assistants for inclusion. And how many are trained?
That I don't know, but I can certainly get that information to you. I know this is a long-standing piece of work, and it's just making sure that we have the right number of people in the right places. I don't have that figure at the top of my head, but I can get that for you.
Thank you, members. Thank you. Gillian, do you want to come back in?
If I may, because I think there are some really positive things in this report, and I know we focus, and I will be very brief because there's a lot of information here for you, but there are 2 reds in this report, and I know that they always draw the eye. However, what we see within here is, yes, we are slightly below target in 5 hires, but we've got the highest level of attainment in advanced hires in Wigtownshire than we've ever had. That's very positive. So yes, there are slightly fewer hires, but I would suggest that the youngsters are actually moving on to take advanced hires, and we've got the highest levels that we've ever had. We've also got highest levels of young people moving on directly to employment, which I think should be commended, and we've got the highest level of positive destination and above the D&G average. We've also got high levels of attainment in national and literacy level 4. So again, literacy 5 is lower than we would like, but we have very positive levels of literacy level 4 above the D&G average. So yes, there are areas that we need to focus on, but I think in general there are some really positive reports here where the Wigtownshire attainment and the wider experience of schools is perhaps showing stronger than the Dumfries and Galloway average.
Thanks, Gillian. I'll bring yourself in a second, David, but I think, yes, you're right. We don't maybe highlight the positivities enough, and I appreciate the council have a protocol around our comms, etc. So it would be for the chair and vice chair in their business meetings with yourself to agree some communications out of education committee. We don't have that facility within Wigtown area committee, and certainly I would request that when you're looking at your comms for your next committee, that we can perhaps highlight certainly in the West how, you know, those really good, fantastic bits of work that are happening. So thank you. David, were you wanting to come back in?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of positive stuff in here, Gillian, and it sometimes maybe feels as though we're having a pick at things that are all marked red or whatever, but no, there is a lot of positive stuff in here. You mentioned positive destinations, and I've highlighted to the head teachers at Douglas Ewart and Stranraer, purely from my perspective in the construction industry, there's a barrier between school and getting them on sites, on construction sites, and that barrier is a simple one-day health and safety touchscreen test. And I've asked whether that can be part of the school day in 4th, 5th, 6th year, whatever it may be, so that they've all got it. It's a fairly simple test, but you've no idea the barrier that removes. If I say to somebody on Friday, can you leave the school today? And he says yes, and I can say, I'll start your Monday, but I can't put you in a building site. You're going to have to wait and go and do a touchscreen test, and that just prolongs the whole process. Whereas if it was available, and believe it or not, it's not available in the college, which for me is just unbelievable. But it's a simple process. It's just a basic tutorial, and then one day it's just a health and safety touchscreen test. So if you can take that on board, that would be a great positive. Thanks.
I certainly will. I remember previous discussions with head teachers about young people getting their ticket, as it was referred to at the time, to make sure that work experience and employment. So yes, if there are practical suggestions, we can either take that back to the school or to the college. But absolutely, thank you very much.
It's just a basic one, you know, just to get them started and get them into that employment, especially in construction, because we're really struggling to get apprentices at the minute. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Ingalls. I think I don't see any other members, and yeah, so when we go to the recommendations, so our first one, 2.1, was to consider the Education and Learning Directorate area-based successes and developments as detailed in the key successes section. We're being asked 2.2 to scrutinise the area report in regards to Wigtownshire as set out in Appendix 1 and the exclusion report in Appendix 2. We're reviewing the attainment summary within 2021 as set out in Appendix 3, and we're being asked 2.4 to consider any aspects of the performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. So if we just maybe take a few moments with that one, there has been a clear request for the review of the BSL. So whether that comes to education or communities or combined, I think if members are content to leave that with officers to come back to the best, most relevant committee for that one. And certainly there's been a lot of requests for briefing information from Councillor McCammon and also from yourself, Councillor Ingalls. So I'll just capture what I've taken a note of. So there was a briefing on Stranraer of where we are to go out to all members, and then there was specific data on homeschooling within Wigtownshire, information on the pupil equity funding, and then data on the primary school inclusive learning assistants. So if that data can be shared with all members, I think that would be really helpful. Just on the final point that David was making there about that additional support for access into work, I am aware, as the chair of the Local Employability and Skills Partnership, Jim Brown sits on there, Jim Education. So if that can perhaps, clearly it's not a performance to be referred to a committee, but if that can be captured, I think that would be really useful for all. So if members are content with those 4 recommendations, with those added parts, are we happy to agree? Thank you. Thank you, Gillian, for your time today. And we'll look forward to the new council plan as well. Thank you. Right. Members, I'm conscious we've been going an hour and 20 minutes, so I propose that we just take a 5-minute comfort break, just to give those on screen a chance to have a break and for ourselves. So is 5 minutes okay, or would members prefer 10? I'm in your hands. 5? Yeah, I'm not sure if lunch. We'll make it 10 minutes. So if we reconvene at past, if members are happy. Thank you. Thank you, members, and yes, that's us live back on. So we will move on to item number 7, which is the social work services end of year assessment. And this is the end of year assessment of business plan. Members are asked to review the overall summary of performance and to consider area-based successes and developments as detailed in the report. There is interesting local details in the Justice Service section of the report and the mention of the new Family Hub 75 in the West. The report highlights the increased workload on social work service staff due to increased demand and legislative changes. It is commendable to read that good practice has been maintained and improved during a difficult period due to staff's flexibility, and certainly my thanks would go on record for that. This has also been highlighted in the areas of children's and family services. The reduction in staffing by 30% seems concerning though for both officers and members. Now, I see Sarah is on screen, but I'm also aware that Sharon Walker is available for members' questions. But I'll maybe pass over to officers if there's anything you would like to add to the report.
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing specific to add in, but obviously I've got some details of the data for our children locally, if that's any help. And also just to say that the staffing situation continues to be a challenge for us in children and families, because we've recruited to all our permanent posts from students that have qualified, but our temporary posts, maternity cover, things like that, haven't been able to fill those posts. We've got another advert out at the moment, so that continues to be a challenge for us.
Thank you. Do members have any questions that they wish to raise just now on regards to the report? I would just maybe comment that in our recommendation we're reviewing the summary reports and the business plan, but again there's no appendix to that business plan, there's no key performance indicators, there's no exception reports, which does make our job exceedingly challenging, and certainly when we come to considering any performances to be referred back to future committees we can maybe touch upon that. But members, are there any questions that you have? Clearly there is a lot of data captured within just the narrative of this. Councillor Ingalls.
Thanks, Chair. On page 80, 3.4.3, Justice Services, unpaid work hours were a major issue over the last 2 or 3 years. There's nothing in here I don't think gives us any background into the number of outstanding hours. I'm wondering whether they've dropped or whether they're increasing.
Can I pass back to yourself, Sarah?
Okay, I'm not really, I haven't got any more information in the report with regard to justice. So I would need to take any questions back to them. Apologies for that.
Thank you. Yes, as Councillor Ingalls is saying, it may well come through communities, but maybe if we capture that as one of the follow-up actions for briefing out to members with the detail on the report. I don't see any other members with any specific questions at this point, so if we're happy... Oh, no, Councillor Hill, and then I'll come back to yourself, David.
Hi, yeah, it was just, I know the new Family Hub 75 in the West is doing incredible things with a lot of families. It's just with the closure to Kenryan House, sorry, at 3.419, if children do need residential, where would they go to now, Sarah, please?
Okay, so obviously we have a residential placement group where we consider any children that do need residential care. Obviously we try and keep that to a minimum. We're trying to support families, we're trying to support kinship placements and foster carers. So at the currently from the West, we've got a very small number that are in residential care, and that includes children with disabilities who wouldn't have been able to be suitable for Kenryan House when it was there anyway. We've also sometimes children need more structured care because of their offending behaviour or whatever, and that might not have met their needs anyway. So we have a similar unit, Hawthorne Road, where some children can go to. That we also use we buy in from services, external agencies that not always external to Dumfries and Galloway. They can be within, but when we need that, and that, because we have so few in the west, which is good, we really didn't need a provision just for them. So we like to keep residential care as kind of, what we would only go to if we have not been able to meet their needs within a family and community setting. So we just look for somewhere that meets the needs of that individual young person, if that is the case, if we do need a residential setting.
Thank you. Do you want to come back at all? Yep.
Thank you for that. Can I ask about families that need respite care as well? Do we have enough respite carers for families who possibly have children with autism or with a disability where they would need a possible break? How are we working with that, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hill. We would use quarriers largely to provide helping us with short breaks for children that have a disability or a specific need, because they specifically recruit carers for that. We also use our own foster carers. Some are assessed particularly for providing respite care. But in addition to that, we look at using personal assistants, that the family have recruited that can help to provide that support for them. That might be using a caravan, whatever is the best for that young person, really. We try and meet their needs on an individual basis. But I haven't got any information today handy on that, but we could bring that for a future meeting if that would be helpful. Okay.
Thank you. I mean, it's certainly, if that information can be captured and supplied to members, that would be really useful. I will maybe come back to that at any other performance coming back to a committee, because there's a difference between sharing that information and getting future reports back. So I think it's really clear that if we're going to request future reports, what the subject is needs to be clarified. But yeah.
Yeah, just with the staffing being a bit of an issue as well, just wondering how that was being staffed and also, so that would be good to get a report back. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I don't see any. No, Councillor Ingalls, you were wanting to come back. Sorry.
Yeah, it's really just an observation. You know, we're all aware of the stresses that and pressures on social work services, but for me, page 81, 3.4.15 highlights that. I mean, these figures are eye-watering per child. You know, it really is a major issue, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Yes, I mean, I appreciate that. Sorry, we're getting a bit of feedback possibly from yourself there, Sarah, but appreciate you might be in a busy room. No, that's fine. Are you able to hear and capture those requests for information to come back to members?
Yes, that's fine. We'll look at further information coming back later. I think that what I would just say about the cost is that the way that we're working with families is trying to support them as much as possible to keep children within their own family and communities, which helps them for the longer term, and it reduces our costs. We'll bring the other information requested to a future meeting.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other members looking to come in. I'll just check online. Nope, I'm not seeing anybody wishing to come in online either at this point. So, moving to the recommendations, we're reviewing the overall summary in 2.1 of the performance within the business plan. I did make reference that it wasn't attached as an appendix, although I do note that it is within the background papers, but I think for future, I think it's really important that we actually highlight that as an appendix, so if we could refer that for future. 2.2 was to consider the additional area-based successes and developments and the key successes, and certainly there's been a request for the information coming back to members. And then 2.3 is to consider any aspects of the performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. So I appreciate there has been a specific request. Members, I don't know if you're looking for a 6-monthly update and for it to be captured within that. Yep, so are members content to request a 6-month update to come back to Wigtown Area Committee? Thank you. Great. Thank you very much for your time. So that's those recommendations made. Thank you. Now, moving on to our next item, item 8. This report is the Health and Social Care Report Overview and highlights that people are accessing services post-pandemic seem to be frailer than those accessing services pre-pandemic, which is a concern. The logistical challenges of delivering COVID vaccinations are highlighted, and it is mentioned that the uptake in D&G was higher than the Scottish average, which must be commended to the team. Sharon Walker from the NHS is available online for any members' questions, and I'll maybe first of all go over to yourself, Sharon, to ask if there's anything you wish to add to the report.
Great, thank you, Chair. There's nothing to the actual content of the report, but what I would like to kind of highlight at this point is obviously this report is still based on our old locality plans. As councillors will be aware, there is a new strategic plan that was launched in March 2022, and work is underway to obviously redesign that locality, the locality reports to actually reflect this plan and obviously the strategic direction of the partnership. So I think it's just that caveat at the moment that we're kind of slightly behind in updating those plans. And my understanding is I think there's an elected members seminar tomorrow that would start to actually look at this and explore this to ensure that whatever is coming back to the area committees is actually what is required by councillors and the communities that they represent. So that's it at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Yes, I appreciate, we're in the process of looking at our council plans and our vision for the next 5 years, and that work is currently in place and moving on. I appreciate that the locality report in front of us is from the Integrated Joint Board, so unlike the other reports, it's not necessarily a council report as such, and so therefore, if I may come in and ask a question myself, and it's in reference to our GP practices. And certainly I'm aware that there was a concerning situation within Ward 2 where there was a situation where there was no GP cover at all across a large area. Now, I have personally contacted, I think yourself, and other members to request an urgent meeting to discuss GP provision across Wigtownshire. I've yet to hear back from any of the partners that I've contacted, which is slightly concerning. So we'll maybe come back to that as an action to take forward. But I also know that members of the community councils have also been in touch trying to ascertain the future and provision. And I think there was a concern raised about the fact that we do have a lack of GPs. And one member of public who had accessed the internet was on the impression that we weren't even advertising for GPs, although there was only one post for a very short part-time. So there was a sort of question raised there, but that's maybe something that we can discuss in a meeting in the future. But I'll maybe open out to members, and I've got Councillor Hill who'd like to come in. Thanks.
Yeah, I've been made aware by constituents that Ward 1 has issues with a lack of GPs as well. So I do think that it's obviously an issue all over the West and probably all over the region, but we could do with getting together and getting a meeting and seeing how we can help with the recruitment or do something to try and alleviate some of the issues or speak to some of the GPs do have lots of staff and see if they could possibly help in the interim.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Is there any other members wishing to come in? Councillor Ingalls.
Yeah, what's happening with Newt Stewart Hospital? Sorry to be a bit blunt on this one, but one of the issues that I'm faced with regularly is palliative care, and where that palliative care takes place now, that it's not in Newt Stewart Hospital. And this in Ward 2, this causes a lot of concern, and I know that the friends in Newt Stewart Hospital, you know, are very vociferous on this. Their view is that care should be as close to the locality where these people live as possible. So the question for me at the minute is, it's not available in Newt Stewart. Where is it available? Is it Stranraer or Dumfries, or is it going out to, are people being sent home under those circumstances? Or what is the policy around that? And is there a likelihood that that palliative care can come back to a facility like Newt Stewart Hospital? I'm aware of the position with the building, but the facilities may not be the best, but the services that come out of there were. And it would be nice if we had those services back in that centre, and we can retain that service provision within Newton Stewart. So, yeah, if you can answer that, that would help me on the street. Let's face it. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Pass over to yourself, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you. I can probably answer some parts of that, but not all of it. In relation to palliative care, most of the palliative care does try to be had at people's homes. So actually delivering that palliative care and that wraparound with the different teams, for example, the nursing teams, the district nursing team, actually supporting, and some of our more palliative care nurses are actually delivering that palliative care within people's homes. Now, I don't know what the future is of whether we will then see Newton Stewart being palliative care being delivered from there in the future. That I can't answer at this point in time, but my understanding is that the palliative care is being delivered in people's homes or as close to there as we possibly can, knowing that Newton Stewart is maybe not the closest place for some people who are living in Newton Stewart. If there's any specifics that, you know, people are not obviously happy with that palliative care, if you can maybe send that directly to me, and I will liaise with our nursing leads to look at that maybe on a more one-to-one basis. But collectively, palliative care is being delivered at home or in the nearest place to that person's home.
Thank you, Sharon. I think it's really important, especially from an elected member's point of view, that the services that were provided out in Newton Stewart Hospital in the future are retained within the Newton Stewart area for the Machars. I think that is something that our electorate expect us to fight for. So hence we're asked constantly what's happening with Newton Stewart Hospital, when's it going to be reopened? And I understand the restrictions within that building and the access to that building, but there's an interim period where if those services like step down from the main hospital before people are able to be discharged with care packages to home or other homes, maybe not necessarily the home they were in, because I've had one recently who have had to move out and go into an adapted property, and it's been an absolute nightmare. But I think the importance for me is that whatever we lose in Newton Stewart, it's only the building. The services need to be there for the Machars, and I think all elected members in our ward will be fighting for that. And that discussion or that conversation, it's really difficult to get that background as to what the plans are, and it would be really good if elected members had that we could pass that on. It's all about communication to the people that stop us, literally stop us on the street and ask us what's happening in Newtonshire Hospital. So I understand, as I say, the restrictions within the building, you know, and I see here it's mentioned once in the locality manager's report that trainee advanced nurse practitioners will work across cottage hospitals. What does that mean? You know, there's no, you can't go to Newtonshire Hospital if there's a major cut in your arm or you know, that sort of thing, that emergency treatment has to now go to Stranraer. So the service provision that comes out of the cottage hospital in Newtonshire needs to be retained in Newtonshire. And in the interim, wherever that's going to happen, in the interim there needs to be something within that building that puts people's minds at rest. And I think it's important that, I mean, you probably know this anyway, you'll have heard this umpteen times, but as I say, I understand the building's not the best, but we need something in the interim. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you. Chair, can I just come back on that? Just
absolutely.
the here and now is all probably I can talk about, and obviously the here and now is where it's been used as an immunisation hub. But I'm taking on board what you're saying about, you know, it's needing to know for the future that those services that were being delivered in there, that they are kept within that Newton Stewart area so that people can access those services as close to home as they possibly can. So I certainly will take that back into the wider conversations that are being done around looking at all of our models of care for health and social care. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else looking to come in at this point. Certainly what I would also do is highlight to members that there is an MSP/MP/councillor, so all elected members briefing with the NHS on the 16th of December, which I appreciate is a while away. Certainly at the last one, it was really informative and certainly highlighting how the cottage hospitals were being used and the number of members of the community accessing services versus how many could be if we had beds was really interesting data. And if that can be captured and reported back, I think it would be really useful. But a lot of it is about the communication because the community don't know. And I appreciate, because I know somebody who works up at the vaccination centre, that it's a hub of activity and staff are using it as a base, but the community don't necessarily see it. And I think it is an important point about that communication. Just again, briefly before I go on to the recommendations, I don't think we can ever say thank you enough to our staff. And I think it's so important to recognise that, you know, the staff within all across the health and social care partnership go above and beyond, and they are under a huge amount of pressure. We've seen press releases coming out. So I think certainly from chairing Wigtown Area Committee just now, I would like to put on record our thanks to the staff and appreciate that it's going to be a tough 6 months ahead. So that, you know, we all really appreciate that. So looking to the recommendations, we're reviewing and scrutinising the summary and performance outlined in the appendix. We've considered the actions proposed that to be adequate to improve performance and future monitoring. And 2.3 is recommend any matters back for consideration by the Integrated Joint Board where considered appropriate. I think within that one it would be really useful to capture that request from myself, but reiterated and from all members of the committee, that there is a request that we have an urgent meeting to discuss GP services across Wigtownshire, not just Ward 2 but across, and how that, you know, we can find a solution for that. So if that's in our gift to request that back to yourselves, it would be really useful to capture. Are members content and happy with those? Yep. Okay, thank you very much for your time, both of you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, moving on to item 9. So our next report is the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Grant Funding Disbursement. Could I ask members first to consider the two recommendations, 2.1 and 2.2, and when we get those agreed, we will move on to consider the scoring panel's recommendations set out in Appendix 2 and 3. So if we turn first of all to the first 2 points there, which are to note the total funding of £51,531.06 for distribution in 22-23, as agreed by communities, and note that the Wigtown Area Committee Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Grant fund eligibility criteria and priorities, which are contained in the appendix. So are we happy to note those? Thank you. So moving on to the next part of that one, members, are we... So yes, we will turn to the scoring panel recommendations. Oh, sorry, David.
Quick question on that second one, 2.2, the criteria. Can I ask, is the criteria, does it hold back people from applying to this? It's not too stringent, or is there anything that you would recommend should be reviewed in there? You think it will, Kate?
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Ingalls. I would say that, you know, obviously members considered the criteria when we met last in September, given that we were, you know, looking to get this funding out the door quickly. So there wasn't the detail in terms of the seminar that we would normally have, but certainly going forward we would be looking at that, and that's where the members would have the opportunity to really look at it. But like I say, on this occasion, it was based on what was agreed last year, was agreed again for this year. Apart from the fact that members decided that they wanted to look at food insecurity and fuel and energy specifically this time.
Thanks, David. Thank you. So yes, if we move on to the scoring panel's recommendations as set out in Appendix 2 and 3, there were 12 applications submitted, and these were summarised in the appendix along with the scoring panel recommendations. Appendix 2 gives the detail of the scoring panel's considerations. Appendix 3 details the level of score achieved by each applicant from the highest to lowest. I would point out that awards are recommended by the scoring panel, and this is an agreed process. I also have additional comments from our Youth Council representatives who were invited, and I'll maybe just say the comment just now in my opening remarks. Finlay has also said and asked me to pass this general comment that they would like to make it clear that they are all incredibly grateful for the opportunity and invite to be part of a scoring panel. However, members of the Youth Council have been incredibly busy over the past month, whether it be individual reasons or in preparation for the joint council meeting on the 3rd of November. We would appreciate invitations to be part of such opportunities in the future. So I think that's very clear that, you know, the youth members want to be part of it. Unfortunately, they weren't this time round. But I think if we can note that and ensure that invite is extended. So are we happy to agree the recommendations as a block, or do members want to go through each one by one? And that we should be aware that we do have discretion about how much is awarded, but we have no discretion around the total amount at our disposal. So therefore, if we change allocations in one aspect, we would need to take away essentially from another. So I'll maybe open it out to members for comments on the process and on those recommendations. I'm not seeing anybody who wants to come in, so are we content to look at these en bloc? I'm seeing one nod in the room. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. So members are content that we look at these en bloc. So that if we can just move on in that case, unless there's any comments on any of the specific projects, that we in 2.3 have considered the Wigtown Area Committee's scoring panel recommendations as set out in the Appendix 2 and 3, and the details in paragraph 3.5 to 3.13, and agree the decisions as appropriate. Are members happy to agree? Yeah. Great. Thank you for that. Now, on to item 10 is the Wigtown Bay Local Nature, and I should say thank you to Ingrid as well. Sorry, I'll jump back there. If Ingrid, I think also again it's really important that members of the community as well as officers make up our scoring panel. So again, I think it's really important to recognise the value of that work. So if that can be passed back, I think that's really important as well. Thank you. Anna, apologies. On to item 10, which is the Wigtown Bay Local Nature Reserve. And this is for noting and contains issues around the bylaws. The report will be considered by ENR Committee on the 15th of November this year, and assuming that the report is at this committee, I'm assuming that the report is at this committee for comments to go back to ENR for consideration, but I will check with Anna, who's online in this case, and I'll maybe pass over to yourself, Anna, and then if there's any comments or questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We would welcome any comments from committee members on the content of the report, and can take that to Economy and Resources for their meeting on the 15th of November to help inform their decision on that meeting. Thank you.
Members, are there any comments or questions, appreciating that this will go back to ENR as well? Perhaps I'll maybe come in myself if I may, and my question is around, clearly there's a role within this and the bylaws around the nature and the sites, and permits around the I'm looking for the word is gone on my mind.
Wildfowling,
indeed. And my question would be, how does this relate in terms of our ambition to look at the climate emergency, biodiversity, and how is this managed effectively and properly? I'm also aware that there's legislation and consultations going into Scottish Parliament about various issues to do with wildlife and how we as a nation go forward. So is consideration being taken to that national conversation as well as our local issues? I will maybe should put on the record as a vegetarian, as someone who's championed biodiversity, it maybe doesn't sit that comfortably with me, which is why I would like to ask the question, because I appreciate sometimes there are ecological reasons why such things take place. But I'll just maybe ask, have all these aspects been considered, or will they in the future before this goes through?
Thank you, Chair. Well, the whole basis for the LNR being established originally was that there was sort of uncontrolled shooting on the reserve, which was putting things out of balance, really. And so the designation of an LNR enables the council to have bylaws in which we can manage that, which is at present a lawful activity. So as part of the work that we're doing, we are going to be redeclaring the reserve, and this time we will be including the Crook of Baldoon. So RSPB at Crook of Baldoon are very keen and have been waiting for a long time to be in the reserve, because that means the shooting will be regulated. So in terms of that, they see it as a positive that they're going to be within the reserve and be covered by the bylaws. You're right, it's a very interesting and important site, and most of it is covered by site of scientific interest designation as well, and therefore the management of the reserve is controlled or looked after, overseen by Nature Scot. And we know that there is work going on, research going on about the potential of what they call blue carbon, and how salt marsh can actually capture, a bit like a peatland can capture carbon, which obviously is of great interest to us regionally. So yes, these are all feeding into sort of larger questions about biodiversity, but having the LNR designation enables us to manage it better, than without. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think, that answers my question. If you don't have the designation, if you don't have the bylaws, you can't then actively manage and control. So no, thank you. Do any other members have any comments that they wish to be captured at this point, or questions? I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, David, yes.
Can you miss this one? It's fairly straightforward on page 124. It's actually a typo. It makes it the longest consultation in history. 2022,
Oh, yeah.
February 2033.
Oops.
No, all good.
Thanks, David. We'll get that amended before it hits ENR, so that's really useful as well. So thank you on that one. Great, so we will move to the recommendations if there's no other comments, which are all for noting 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. And thank you, Anna, for your time. Are we all happy to note? Great. Item 11 is for the Whithorn and Wigtown Common Good Funds Committee, and we're just being asked to approve these minutes. Are members happy? I think it's only myself, David and Jackie who can do that, although... Oh no, sorry, Chrissy, you were there, apologies. Are members happy to approve these minutes? Yes. Thank you. Item 12 is any other business deemed urgent by the chairperson, I'll say. I've got chairman, but I'm a chairperson. The only point that I was going to raise was about the location of meetings. Myself and Councillor Scobie had a discussion about the locality, and certainly within the previous council term, there was custom and practice that we would have one area committee in Ward 1, the subsequent one being in Ward 2. So there's no actual detailed delegated decision on that one, so I would put it to members, and I would like to propose, if members are content, or put up an alternative, that in future that we have alternate meetings within Ward 1 and Ward 2, so we can be accessible and encouraging across the ward. But I'll maybe put out to members to ask their thoughts.
Can I just come in on that one? Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's a good idea. The Wigtown Hall acoustics are a nightmare. I mean, I have hearing problems anyway, but I don't know whether anyone else agrees with this, but I find them really difficult sitting in that hall to pick up on exactly what everybody's saying. So I don't know whether it's something that we should be looking at, if we're going to do that, whether it should be Newton Stewart in the Macmillan Hall, whether that's a possibility, because I know the acoustics in there are far better. But that's the only comment I would make, Chair. The acoustics in the main hall in Wigtown are very poor.
Thank you. I'm seeing nodding around the room and from our technical team as well, who are capturing this as well. So I get my proposal would be that we agree today that the Wigtown Area Committee would alternate between Ward 1 and Ward 2. Are members content to delegate to officers to find the most suitable venues across those areas? I am really conscious in the past that Wigtown Area Committee went all round the wards, but whether we want to look at Newton Stewart as an alternative or a different room within Wigtown, are members content to leave that delegated to officers to organise?
Yep. I think we need to talk to the sound people as well, because...
Right, and I see online as well, we've got Councillor McCammon who's happy to agree as well, so thank you. Great, I don't have any other members, or not members, issues, comments, items of business, but thank you very much for your time. I'm aware that I think lunch is available for those, and we have our council plan meeting this afternoon, so maybe see some of you online. But thank you very much for your time, and to staff and officer support as well. Thank you.